Well, hello model car fans. Welcome to the Muscle Car Modeler. My name is Revell, and here I'm just updating you on the progress of my Revell 70 AAR Cuda that I'm building here. This is quite a kit, a very pleasurable kit to build with a lot of nice detail right out of the box. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it, as you've seen, from my reviews on the channel and some of my builds. I really like the AAR Cuda, and I do like the 70 Cudas. But I've got a few things that I really like about this kit, and it's got a lot of really built-in detail, even though I pointed out some of the flaws or errors, inaccuracies in this kit. It's going together quite well, even though I've done a few mods. I did bring up sanding the wheel well moldings down and how it really makes an improvement there, and I did that. And then also, now that I've got the chassis mostly together, there's the 8 3/4 rear end that I swapped in it instead of the Dana. So that's been swapped in, and it just fits in there beautifully now. I mean, you can see I got most of that in there, and I started to assemble it. And the 340 engine in it with the air cleaner or oil filter and decal there. Lower radiator hose is in place. Even got shocks. You can see them from the side there. There's the front shocks glued in place and ready to go. And then also the rear shocks are in there, which the other Cudas that I had built are the monogram 1/24 scale. I had built those, the 71s, and I've got a couple converted into 70s that I have not shown you, but I did them a long time ago. And this thing brings up some possibilities that I hadn't really thought of before, being that this is 1/25th scale and it's got a beautiful chassis and a really nice engine compartment and a lot of details. And I brought up that it had the wrong brake booster and the radiator hose is wrong for 340, but the Hemi parts are right, big block parts. I was actually thinking this might be a pretty nice engine compartment and chassis swap to put in an MPC vintage 1/25th scale Cuda, or maybe even the Johan Cuda, which is a race car. I have built a couple of those. I've shown one on the channel, but not both of them. But I do have all of the MPC ones. I got a 70, couple of 71s, a 72, 3, and a 74. But I haven't built any of them. And since I got a couple of 71s, I was starting to think maybe I can get another one of these Hemi Cuda ones and swap the entire engine compartment into it and some of the other details in the chassis and see how some of that stuff fits. Although this is kind of a tight fit, and when you put it in here, you put it in backwards and then tuck the front end. And as I found out, I've knocked the battery out because it's a real tight fit with the radiator right there. So I knocked the battery back out. So the directions have you glued in ahead of time, and if you're real careful, yeah. And then I glued this water bottle in, or the windshield washer bottle, and the directions tell you to do that later, so maybe that's why, is I shouldn't have glued that in. But they're back in there, and so that might have something to do with it. But I didn't follow the directions quite to a T. But she's coming along really, really nicely. But some of these details are really nice and pretty darn accurate. And considering it's got the entire firewall, the motor, brakes, the steering column that's in there, if you can see that. It's got the steering column and the steering gear, which are right here. It's kind of hard. I kept knocking that out. So I glued that back in place I don't know how many times, and it's in there finally. But every time I'd fit the chassis, it'd knock it off. But she's in there. And then another thing, tucking this in here, I did blackout, so you can see the blackout in there on the firewall, even though the grill hides it. So once the grill's in place, that's hidden, but you can see it down here. And you can see the frame horns of the chassis. I'm also going to hit those up with some blackout. And then the corners where it's molded and it rounds a little bit, I hit that with some semi-gloss black. So I still got to black out some of that. But the rest of it I blacked out, kind of how Mopar did back then. But I still got to put the hood latch in place, and I'll detail paint some of that to make it stand out a little bit better. But and then these carburetors, for what's in the kit, those are really nice. It does have the heater hoses, and then I mentioned the radiator hose, which is on the wrong side, but just one small inaccuracy. And a few other things. You can kind of see the seat belts in there. Those are kind of cool. Since the white really stands out, I put them on there just to make them visible. And pretty cool, nice touch. Not a big fan of the seat belts, but decided since they were provided and they were pretty decent, I was going to use them. So I put those seat belts in there. And then also, the rearview mirror is actually pretty accurate, molded with the ribs on the back side. And on the real car it's black, and then just the post is chrome. So I did that to this one. And it's also got a dome light in there, and then separate sun visors that are separate from the glass. The glass is a little finicky to fit, but I got them in there, and they glued in really well. So I'm pretty happy with the way they are. And I foiled all around that, and then I foiled the back panel. I had to touch up a small spot back there, so wish it stayed the airbrushed way, but it pulled off, and then I brushed it, and it stands out a little bit, but detailed out the taillights. Had to do a little bit of trimming, and also this I got to push up just a little bit. So when I tuck this spoiler in, or not the spoiler, the rear valance, I got to push this up in and glue that in place. So just a little bit of holding when I get that in there. We'll see how well that holds. And the drum brakes are a nice touch. And I blacked out the wheel wells. I'm going for the really over restored look, but with all the pieces fitting together very nicely and tightly, I think it's looking really good and detailed really well. But it's a pretty cool chassis, and even the interior is really nice. It fits in there kind of funny with the pegs that you can see right in here. Those are visible. There's another one back here, but you can't see it. And I'm really happy with the way this is going. And this one will be done pretty soon, but that's looking really good. And a lot of the details that are built into this, I mean, like the steering linkage, all a separate part. And here's the front suspension with the disc brakes. I still got to paint the calipers, but detail painted that and put that on there. Sway bar is a separate part. Detailed that out. I still have to glue the spoiler on. And I started working on the air cleaner. So the air cleaner is orange, and I started to paint the white here, and doing an okay job on it. I got to touch it up in a couple of spots, but then I realized they give you a decal right there, if you can see that. That goes all the way around the air cleaner. So I'm going to give that a try, which is pretty accurate to the round mesh system that they did. Got a couple of plates here. Not sure which ones are those I'm going to use. Then I got down here is the chin spoilers, and then the hood. Got to put the hood pins in, and I got to put the hood hinges on here. And the hinges are actually metal, and they were actually painted body color from the car. So I did paint these in violet like I did the rest of the body. And then the mirrors are painted in violet. I got the bumpers pretty much ready to go on. I got some detail painting. And then this is a really nice grille. It's nice and deep. I got some ideas on how to make the turn signals that are mounted up high look pretty good. So I think I'm going to either foil or do the Motolo pen in silver in there to get it to stand out. And then I'll put the lens in there. And I'm thinking on the lens, on the very back edge, the orange bulb would be in there. I'm thinking about just putting orange on the back side so it has the turn signal amber orange transparent paint to be where the bulb would go, because the bulb was orange but the lenses were actually clear. I'm going to see how that looks. And then the rest of this, the fog lights, are actually road lamps. They're not fog lights for this car technically. And then the headlights, which are actually engraved really nicely. So I mean, the included detail is just really, really nice. And you know, multiple pieces to put this grille together. And I'll just do a real fine silver around the side here to give it that highlight, and then put the Plymouth decal in there. And then I still got to put the decal on the trunk, the Cuda and the lock cylinder, and then put the Plymouth on the front, and turn signals and mirrors. But she's coming along really nicely. So I'm excited to get this thing almost done, but I wanted to show you some of the updates and the blackout panel and some of the detail you can see on this. But I still got a detail out. This is one other area I think is kind of weak on this, is the tires. So I've got some tire transfer decals I'm going to probably use, or some water slide decals. But I still got to detail paint these and clean up, because in some of the holes there's some of the chrome. And I'll black out the sides since you can see the drums and everything. But get these all detailed and mounted. But she's coming along really good. Here's my Detail Master upper radiator hose that I'm gonna put in there. But now that I've got the chassis mounted and the engine mounted, I can put the hose in, because the radiator mounts to the chassis and the engine is off to the side and it flexes a little bit. So once I got it mounted like this, now I can put that hose in. So it's getting pretty ready. But really happy with this kit and really enjoying it. So highly recommend this kit. I mean, I pretty much enjoy all my builds, but this one's going really well, and I'm really happy with it and enjoying it. So it starts to get me wondering about the possibilities of what to do with the other versions. And since I have both of those, I have one of the Hemi and then one of the Sox & Martin race Hemi car. But I haven't built either one of those. So this is the first one I built of that tooling. But I've also got those MPC ones that I'd restore eventually, and getting those done. And then I like these exhaust. The instructions tell you to paint this black. I did find a lot of the cars this isn't painted black, but I read somewhere that that's supposed to be accurate, that it's blacked out. This pipe is blacked out. And sometimes the back of the mufflers were blacked out, but not always. So they weren't quite as noticeable from behind. But this I painted aluminum. I'm going to bare metal foil it to give it a little bit more of the chrome look than just the silver paint that's on there right now. But this is all fitting together really nice and going really smoothly. So I'm really enjoying it. So thank you for subscribing and tuning in and listening to me ramble on and go about my building and enjoyment here. And you guys, you have a wonderful Saturday, and I will see you next weekend.